Hello. Happy Saturday morning, everyone. I have no Sherry with me this morning because Sherry is in Vancouver, um, and she's at an Antiochian church in Vancouver to see Jonathan Pajot speak at the church, um, and so I am just here by my lonesome. So I'm going to I'm going to start reading from Martin Shaw's Scatterlings, which um, Martin told me himself that he considers his most important book, and he put out a reading list for the people that attended the Symbolic World Conference recently, and it was one of his two books that one of the two books of his own that showed up on the list, and I particularly like it. So I'm just gonna start reading from it. I'm gonna read actually from the very beginning. So this is actually how the book starts. Hair. Who is Queen of Dartmoor? How does the salmon or white doe fare? Who is the one to ask for? Lay your gifts at solitary hair. I glimpsed her first from the shepherd's hut, and then sometimes outside throwing coffee granules into the rain. Late autumn frost and bold as brass, hair in the long grass is bounding, darting, lying low like a small earthy tump. Hairy, toothy, wet-backed, utterly wild, an emissary from an entirely different century, or even outside time altogether. By spring there'd be rabbits on the grass, and she'd be gone. But for a little while, hair was in my life. Come March, I'd search, but wouldn't spot those long ears in the scrub, those great jugs of sound. But I remember her jubilance in the rain. I remember. January. It's a mild afternoon. The very first snowdrops flower by my boots. The sun, like a dulled bronze coin, behind a glowing flank of cloud gray. I enter I enter the wood behind the hut. I blow under the first gateway of holly, then oak, and into the always unexpected grove of redwood trees. I never quite get used to them. Today, the wind is like foam breakers crashing on the distant beach. Immense, protracted roars in those scoured branches. I stretch my neck to see if there are any fishing boats wrapped around the timber. I pass a smearing of bloody magpie feathers enmeshed in wire fencing. There's been a scrap of some kind. Magpie did not dust itself off. Crow continues to drill the road overhead, and underneath there's a little cluster of songbirds. Today, I love hair like I love pirate ships, old maps of Scotland, and pipe smoke in autumn. A kind of love without thought, just a great affectionate lurch of the body toward what claims it. So, in the absence of my teacher, I give praise to the air that it may carry those words to those vast twitching ears. Hair, taken into battle and used as divination by Queen Boudica, as if erupted from the folds of her skirt. The way it leapt gave sacred information to the Iceni. It takes a woman to understand hair's powers. As long as you expect it to behave as a swaggering hero, you will be disappointed. But let it be its nature, and you are in the presence of wisdom. Hair, a body suffused unusually and liberally with blood, a royal dish. The people of the fields prefer rabbit to the bucket blood, dark flesh, and strong stink of hare's meat. For the rich, this can be all negotiated by servants in faraway kitchens. Then magically it becomes highly desirable. But Robert Burton in Anatomy of Melancholy warns against it. Hair is a black meat, melancholy and hard of digestion. It breeds incubus, often eaten, and causeth fearful dreams. Hair, the leaper, the hare-brained swift whose time is spring, of buddings and sudden emergings, there's no plod with this one. The Algonquin have knowledge for us Moor people. They say hair is Mikabo, great hair, maker of sun, moon, and earth. Hair is a ruler of the winds. The reason Dartmoor is so filled with chills is because of the daily comings and goings of those laying tribute at Hare's feet. Hare, here come some of your faraway names. Lord Hare, Lord of the Day, Manabanza, Hiawatha, Manabasho, Manabush, Manabozo, Nanabozo, Wenabozo, Great Hare, Minabozo, Nanaboaja, Nanabush, Abnaki Gluskop, Iroquois Iokeshka, Menimone Manabush, Montagnes Masu. Hey, there's a Shari. How about that? Oh,
I
so you
couldn't leave
were.
you alone. My heart was
Thank
going out to
you.
you.
Yeah, I was just having fun, just reading Martin Shaw's Scatterlings.
It sounded like
Um,
a weird language. What was it?
oh, it was he was listing the names of hair. Um,
Hare?
far away names, so names of Hare, yes, like the hair, like
Okay,
in different countries and languages.
right.
And then he says here, then he goes into the English names. Here are some of your close-up names. These I whisper: Old Turpin, Old Turpin Puss, Light Bringer, Hidden Quiet of the Buyer, Long Flank, Tremble Heart, the one they track with silver, the way beater, the stag of the stubble, get up quickly, flincher, dew beater, the furs cat, lurker, squatter in the hedge, the swift as wind, shagger, the fellow in the rain, wide-eyed one who lurks in the broom, the low creeper, one who turns to the hills. Dartmoor here. Here is a story about you and your people. That's actually so. This little reflection on the hair is how the Scatterlings starts. So I
Oh,
was just
I
beginning to read from Scatterlings. So tell me about what you're like. When does the thing that you're going to actually start?
it starts at 9:45. So I
At
thought
nine
it started at
forty-five.
8:45. So I was like in a hurry, and
Oh,
then I I thought
well
it's
then we
not
can just
unusual.
chat while and then we'll just. That sounds like it. Like like yeah, we can just chat until you need to. You said it's just across the street too, right?
It's
So
right
it'll take you
across
long
the
to get there.
street. Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm really excited.
How many people are
Plus,
there?
like not just because I'm going to see Jonathan do a seminar, which will be great because it's in a church setting, right? So it's not going to be like I don't think it'll be like the Symbolic World
I don't think so. It'll be much more
Summit.
intimate. And it's cool. I kind of wish. Honestly, I would have been like,
Well, I think
I
even
would
the
if I.
I think even the content might be different, like
Sure, I
but
would imagine so.
yeah, and then there's a divine liturgy tomorrow, and I haven't been to one since last June, so
I, I'm
I'm
sure
really
you're
excited.
excited for that.
I am very excited, and I've never been in an Antiochian church before, so that's also cool.
I never have either.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Of course, I've only been in one Orthodox church, and it happened to have been. It was a
Right.
Ukrainian
Yeah.
actually. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
um, it's there's a well, actually, I think it's. I don't know if it's actually. I'm not sure if it. I'm not sure what its church affiliation is, but it was started by Ukrainian immigrants. I know that, but I think like it came to serve a population that was mixed between Russian, Ukrainian, Greek, and Middle Eastern. Because it was a
Well, that's
it
kind of
became
like
a
the OCA mission where I got
it had
baptized.
it was up to 300 people that it served at its peak when it was because Wilkinson was kind of an important mining town,
Mhm.
so at its peak. But now it's actually a historic landmark. It's on the National Registry of Historic Places.
Well, apropos your fairy tale thoughts this morning,
Yeah.
I'm staying in a 150-year-old um, hotel
Mhm.
from Canada's historic past, which is this long. But it was a fort.
Whoa.
There was a fort here in Langley where I am, and
But Canada
anyway,
has a much longer history than that. What do you mean? There's
no,
been
but
people in Canada for a very long time.
well, there's that, but
You
the
know,
West had.
actually, this is interesting. No, I want to hit on that because,
Let me
so that's
finish.
what I,
Let me
okay, I'll
finish.
let you finish.
Okay, because this place that I'm staying in is called the Princess and the Pea Hotel, which is a fairy
Okay.
tale. Okay, and every room is a fairy tale. So there's the Goldilocks room, the Snow White room, the Cinderella room, right? I happened to choose. I chose the Goldilocks room because I told her I felt more like a Goldilocks than a Cinderella.
Oh, so you're one of the, so you're a naughty girl then.
Goldilocks. Well,
Goldilocks is
Goldilocks.
kind of bold, don't you think? I mean, as
Yeah,
fairy tale
and
characters go, she's kind of like.
yeah, and she hung out with three bears. So yeah, I'm like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like more like
She's
a
an
Goldilocks.
adventurous type, that Goldilocks. I'm not
Totally.
saying any of that in a bad way. She just is like, she's definitely a different type than
Yeah.
other types of fairy tale characters.
Yeah, she
So.
is. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of. I just had to share that with you because you were talking about fairy tales this morning. So I thought, oh, if only
Yeah.
Nate knew where I was staying.
Well, no, it's funny. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the fairy tale thing, it came up randomly. So this is just proof that good things come out of Twitter sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on Twitter this morning and or X, whatever. I can never call it that. I really just can't. So there's this guy that I met at the Symbolic World Summit. He's a Ukrainian guy. His name is Vlad.
Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very, very, very intelligent guy. He's a computer programmer. I don't know. I've had this experience. I've met a lot of smart people in my life, but then occasionally there's this level of smart that I've only encountered in certain Eastern Europeans that I've met. That it's just
Yeah.
like it's another level of smart altogether, and it just happens to be Eastern Europeans that I've met that happen to fit in that category, where it's just like their intelligence is so broad and all encompassing.
Well, that's
Um,
anybody outside of the United States.
Maybe so. Well, the ones that I've encountered it most in were like have happened to have been like there's some Bulgarian guys that I knew at Thomas Aquinas College. There was a Lithuanian guy I knew at Thomas Aquinas College who was like that too. And
Yeah.
then like so Vlad is like one of these kinds. It's like it's like you understand everything. Like you don't. So he's like a programmer, and obviously he's like very good with, very good with math. But he's definitely not a lopsidedly left brain
Yeah.
person, even though he speaks that like just like very really amazing clarity of vision of the world,
Right.
and with a heart to do good, and to see beauty, and just a very impressive individual. And
You know.
so,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was just reading. I was just listening to Douglas Harding on my road trip down here,
I
and
know I saw the thing you shared in Discord. That was good. So
and
good.
there's that's only like the tip of the iceberg, Nate. Like seriously,
Yeah.
there's so much stuff in those last like last section from the new angelology on. It's unbelievable. I'm just like, yeah, and I hadn't read it yet, right? Like, so anyway, but what he talked about there was he did actually. I kept thinking about it when he was doing it. Was he did what Vervaeke did with the Meaning Crisis series, the first one. He walks through philosophical, scientific, religious thought, right from like way as far back as you can go up to his present day, which actually hasn't really nothing's changed much. Like when did he write that book in the 50s or something?
Yeah, in the 50s.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't notice anything really missing because by that time he got to the nuclear age, right? And modernity was at the point where religion was just a byword. So it was all not it had nothing's changed in that sense, right? And but he talks about I get a vision in my mind of somebody sucking up all of the past history, all of that thought, human consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and then pushing it out in a way that is filled with the spirit. And so I just kept seeing all this overlap with what Harding was talking about, what John Reveki's talking about. And Harding essentially says we need a religion that's not a religion.
Oh, Vlad is watching.
Hi, Vlad. And and then also the overlap with McDonald, with C.S. Lewis, with there was one other name that I had in my head there, but I lost it. Oh, Rudolf Steiner.
Right. Well, do you
And
remember, Shari, just like in this vein that you're talking about, do you remember the thing that Martin Shaw said in your conversation with him where he talked about how Christianity like turned out to be the big shamanism that he was looking
yes,
for all along? Like
yes,
that's the thing. Like
it
that's
is
the
the
thing.
thing. It is
And
the
when
very
we
much the thing.
and when you start to talk about Christianity being the religion that is not a religion, like that's the way you need to come to understand it. This is why this is, and I think like for people who want an intellectual path into this, there's more that because there actually is. Like I actually think like I actually had this thought when I was sitting in Jordan Daniel Wood's class this Monday, listening to him talk about Maximus the Confessor and listening to the enthusiasm in his voice and just like seeing his passion. There is actually you actually can, if you follow that path of intellect and abstraction all the way to the end of it, to where you come like you come into the encounter with paradox and then you're willing to live into the paradox, that
Mhm.
actually is another form of mysticism. So to
Yeah,
me, like Jordan
that's what
Daniel Wood is a mystic.
listen, Nate, this is why I got so confused. Well, I mean, it wasn't surprising to me that Rafe didn't really understand my question because, but I I'm getting more and more personally frustrated. Not frustrated with anybody in particular. I'm not angry with anybody, but I get more and more personally frustrated when you use certain terms and people think that they belong to a certain category that is unreachable, like mysticism. Okay, when we went through Tomberg's book, the first thing that I realized was that mysticism was simply paying attention.
Yep.
Okay, it was paying attention, it was contemplating, it was ruminating, and then it was spitting it back out in sacred magic. Okay, and 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 what's become really apparent to me is that everybody's words are their own magic. Like, I'm listening to Douglas Harding and he's expressing this idea in his own terms, but I've heard it from all these other people, and
Mm-hmm.
none of them know that the other necessarily is holding the same views. Only I can see that. Okay?
Right.
Because they're all talking about it in their own sacred magic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's no. I do know exactly what you're saying, and like I think like yeah. So and we get kind of like caught up. Sometimes we get sidetracked by getting caught up in the particularity of the mode of expression, and
Right.
we can't see that actually if you look in the direction that the mode of expression is pointing,
Mm-hmm.
even though they may be very different, they're actually pointing at the same place.
Yeah. Like, for example, a literary critic can talk about poetic relations,
Right.
and a pastor or a priest would talk about incarnation. Okay? But they're talking about the same thing. And this is what they don't know. This is what a lot of people don't know. And somehow I feel like this is what fairy tale gives to us. Okay, it brings us into the land of imagery. It brings us
Yes.
into the land of imagination, and it's talking about all these things without using any words in this. Of course, you have to tell the fairy tale, but the fairy tale is an image. It isn't
Right.
it's not a proposition, and so you have to enter into the land of it. And in that land, you recognize things, right? Because there's a deep familiarity to reality, capital R, or truth, capital T. Okay, there's a deep
Yeah.
familiarity with it, and everybody has that same sense that they know it. Okay,
Right.
and so you get into the space of fairy tale, and there isn't really anything to argue about, you know, there's nothing there to argue about.
Right. Which makes it easier for, which is why they're so effective, because it allows there you're not you will it allows you to just kind of like let it in and
Well, you
just
know,
to,
I think people understand. I think people get a deep sense of being carried by a fairy
mm,
tale, right?
right, yeah,
Like they
no,
don't
that's good,
actually, it's like something comes underneath and lifts them up to a certain
right,
transcendental, you know, perspective. And then they get to ride the story. Okay. And the beautiful part about it that is that there it's like, I don't know, I've never surfed, but I can imagine it's like riding a wave. You use your body in the way that is helpful to you, okay?
right,
And so you can't prescribe movement on a surfboard. Everybody's going to do it differently, and that's exactly what the fairy tale requires. It requires you to move in a way that allows you to stay carried by it, right? If you decide to argue with the fairy tale, let's say, put it in simple terms, you're going to fall out of the story. That's what happens. Like if you
so
say something like, that's not true, nobody can do that, right?
right,
Then
right,
you just fell out of the story. You're gone. Fairy tale land is
right,
gone.
right,
It's like George MacDonald's shadow, right? That follows the Nodos. And whenever he sees something enchanted, it moves independently over that enchanted thing and turns it into something normal. It's the
wow, yeah,
worst. It's the
yeah,
worst thing ever.
yeah. So yeah, so I officially scheduled our first fairy tale and folktale live stream for March 30th, because like Vlad like gave me this, he had this list of like of Slavic folktales and asked if I
Yeah,
had
they're
heard of
amazing.
any of them. I'm like, no, I haven't, but will you come? And so I invited him, like, hey, would you come? Like, if I did a folktale and fairy tale live stream, would you come on and share?
Oh, so
And
Vlad's gonna come on
he's
and
gonna
share
come
some.
on, yeah.
Oh,
So
oh, oh.
on the 30th
Well,
on our first, and I think like I think that's gonna be, and I think this is gonna be a thing I'm gonna do regularly. It's
well, that's
dedicate
what I'm trying to
streams
do with George
to,
MacDonald's stuff. You know, like I've tackled the essays, and I run out
right,
of essays because that's not his thing, right? He doesn't write
right,
essays; he writes stories.
right,
And so now we're in the land of stories, and Luke wanted to talk about some of those Owen Barfield essays in that thing, but I really want to get back to the stories because
yeah.
I don't know. I just you know,
Well,
there's
I was commenting to my priest after like we saw Martin Shaw, and like there was one of the stories that Martin Shaw told had very deep theological content. And I was talking to my priest about the theological content of the story, and he's like, and then I said to him, I said, can you imagine conveying that any more effectively by actually like
no.
like presenting it in theological language and explaining it theologically than Martin did in his story? And he said
Right.
no. And he said no. And that is like, and that it's true. It's like, it's just like, and it is, you're precisely right. It's because of the images. And here's the thing about folk tales and fairy tales, they're very light on ornamentation of language,
Mm-hmm.
but they do have strong images.
Of course.
And it is those strong images that give them the power that they have
Right.
to do what they
And
do.
then okay, so here's the thing though, Nate. Like this is why someone like Jordan Wood loves George MacDonald and Maximus, because they're both telling the same story.
Oh yeah.
Maximus is saying that incarnation is creation, and George MacDonald is saying that incarnation is creation. This is what fairy tales say. They say that incarnation is creation, and creation is incarnation. Okay?
Right.
So Maximus, I haven't read Maximus and I haven't read Jordan's book, but I can imagine that what Maximus does is he tries to go at it from a philosophical angle, right?
Yeah.
And George MacDonald just tells the stories. He shows you how creation is incarnation. And this is what I was talking to Oscar a little bit this morning about this. And, but, you know, we live in a world of what? Images, forms, right? Representations, figurations, right? This is Plato, George MacDonald, Rudolf Steiner, you know, all these guys, right? So when you look around, so this is what George MacDonald says in the Imagination essay. When you look around, you're looking for language, okay? And you derive your language from the forms around you. So you talk about how you feel by the movement you see of the wind on the grass, right? You talk, or the water coming in, lapping up on the shore. You talk about waves of whatever, anger, or waves of, you know, so anyway, George MacDonald shows us how language is derived from the forms around us, and then the really hard to grasp thing about this is that because creation is incarnational, the meaning is already in the form. Okay, the form itself contains the meaning. God put it there. Okay, and this doesn't mean it has one meaning. Okay, because George will often talk about meaning in the sense that your meaning might be better than mine. You know, people ask, well, what does your fairy tale mean? He says, your meaning might be better than mine. You know, doesn't matter, right? So if you use the forms to tell stories, which is what fairy tales are, they use the images, creation, and the meaning is already in those forms, then what happens is our imagination lights the lamp inside the form. It illuminates the meaning inside the form that is already God-given. And I don't know how to say this. It's like,
no, that's good because it suggests. I like that a lot because that actually suggests the same. That actually the same. When I was talking to Luke earlier this morning, and he was talking about beauty being the eye of the beholder, in the eye of the beholder, and there was Aaron came on and like asked him to clarify, and Luke talked about how he sees a reciprocity in that, and what you just said points to that same sort of reciprocity. Like
right.
it's not just that. Yeah, that's the best.
Well, see, the thing is, okay, essentially, when you tell a story, and you derive, and you don't fall out of the story, okay, you don't disenchant it, but you tell the story, and like our wonderful poet friend Emily Dickinson, you tell it slant. All right, so that's what you're doing in a fairy tale. You're telling something slant, and you actually can't go wrong. You can't go wrong because you're using images that are God-given, God-created, and God put the meaning in them, and they will always tell the same story. And that's why I keep saying we need to know the story that we're in, because we people are living in a fairy tale.
Say more about that.
Well,
I mean, you got my attention, but I want to know exactly like what that means to you when you say it.
Okay, well,
if you don't mind.
I had a conversation with Wayne and Michael Levy the other day, right? And we talked about
great
beauty.
Guys. Love those guys.
We talked about beauty, and we were talking about beauty, and then Wayne was just saying how, you know, when he looks out the window, he sees a tree, and he has to understand that Christ is in that tree, right? That tree is Christ, and I can and I totally get what he's talking about. I also understand where he is because I was there too. I knew that to be a, let's say, fact. Okay. But I didn't really understand how that could be. So in response to him, I said, well, listen, if you, we don't love things. Okay. This is how all this is created, by the way. It's created by love. Okay. We don't love things. We love persons because things are static and they end up boring us over time, right? And so we can think we love them, but we don't really love them. We just like something, right? But a person we love because they are a mystery to us. They confound us, and they push us to seek them out, right? To find out who they are. What does that mean? What does Nate mean? What does Shari mean? Okay. And so we have to, you know, this is a very simple prescription. And it was my challenge in that conversation. We have to stop seeing the tree as a thing. And we have to start seeing it as a person, right? And then I referred to Emil Bock saying, we've lost our first love, right? And our first love is the love of the earth. And so if we love it, it is no longer a thing.
Well, Sherry, it's interesting that that's what you're saying because so one of the things I was talking like so Vlad, as I mentioned, he's a programmer, right? And he was talking and he was talking about like how he like wants to try essentially to agape AI as a programmer, and and then I stumbled across a part of a quote from Bulgakov where he's talking about how like essentially God only creates life, and part of what the human is here to do is to bring all that which is seemingly lower on the chain of being higher up into personhood effectively, and the love is the way in which that is done, like
Right, but
specifically
this is where
specifically go ahead.
well, I just, you know, because people think, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to love the tree, right? What does that mean? You
Right,
go and hug it?
right, right,
No, it means you come into relationship with it. So what do you have to
right,
do? You have to practice
exactly.
mysticism. You have to practice mysticism. You have to look at the tree and you have to let it speak to you. And I know how crazy this all sounds, but it isn't crazy. It is not crazy. Because if God put us in this world with all these images through which we develop our own language, right? And begin to tell stories, and the meaning is already in there, in those images, right? So if you take a tree and you put it in a story, it's always going to mean, like this is what he says, and Jordan likes this quote too. He's quoted it. You're going to always mean less than you're saying, and God's going to always mean more. Okay. So that's why George MacDonald can say, if you know, if you get a different meaning to my fairy tales, it might be superior to mine, right? Because the meaning is in the representations. It's in the images, right? It's in the symbol. It's not in the words. And so, you know, Wayne read a piece out of what's his name there? C.S. Lewis's Hideous Strength.
Yeah.
About this woman who was walking along and she was looking at moss and mold and I think a little brick pathway or something. I can't remember exactly. And in an instant, she felt like she was looking at a person. Okay, and this is what she's looking at. And she felt like she crossed over into a threshold into something else. Well, what he didn't say but was saying was that she crossed into fairyland. Okay, everything changed and nothing changed, right? And so, and this is why it's so hard for us, because the multiplicity, the particular, remains particular, right? But if you just translate that into the body of Christ being us, okay, we are a multiplicity. We are all particular, and yet we are all one person, okay? So we don't lose our particularity. We don't lose our particular meaning, right?
Right.
And
Actually,
anyway,
right. No, that's right. That kind of like what you're just saying. Do you mind sharing the passage from Hierarchy of Heaven and Earth that you had dropped in the Discord on the
I can't
screen?
look at it because it's on my iPad, but can you
Okay.
read
Do you
it?
want? How about? Do you mind? I can do it. Do you
Yeah,
want me
you
to do
read
it?
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll read it. So, I think I could probably put it on screen too. Here, hold on a second. You put that in the main chat, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Here we go. All right. Let me just get this set up. Well, I probably won't share screen. I'll just read it.
Yeah, just read
All
it.
right. Here we go. Here we go. This is it. From Shari, quoting from Douglas Harding's Hierarchy of Heaven and Earth. On the other hand, to act lovingly toward all creatures without hope of temporal reward is already to live in the timeless kingdom where they are one. Time is the product of our reciprocal distrust. We abolish it to the extent that we love. And to love is to deny the separate self. And to push this denial to the limit is the only way to keep inviolate the separate self. Conversely, insistence upon our personal immortality is itself a demonstration of mortality. The specification of the true time machine is an open secret. It is self-transcending sympathy and goodness. And the working of this engine is no patent process. To go forward in time, we must go back to where we broke away from all other creatures, so that we may go forward in them. Trying to claim the future asymmetrically without its equal past is like trying to get a sum right by going on and on instead of going back to where it went wrong, and only then going forward to the solution. The survival of the living and the resurrection of the dead are halves of one whole. Nevertheless, immortality is not to be contrived by us, but enjoyed as established present fact. In the other. Indeed, our business is rather to cease breaking up the time-transcending totality than to start building it. Not what our life is, but what it holds for us is the vital question. Our need is not length of days, but depth, capacity, comprehension, and the death that makes room for the life of those we love. It is no ordinary culprit that is his own headsman, and no ordinary corpse that conducts his own autopsy. For me to witness my death is to survive it. Dead men do not practice self-observation. On the other hand, to act lovingly toward all creatures without hope of temporal reward is already to live in the timeless kingdom where they are one. It repeats. Okay, it looks like.
Oh,
Okay.
I might have clipped it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway.
I think it actually repeats itself. Yep. Okay. Trying to find where. Okay. There is a sentence in between here. Okay. There we go. Here's the sentence that's missing from the first verse. So yeah, does repeat twice, but there's a sentence in the second line. To be present at every one of my cosmic deathbeds. That I like that one. Every one of my cosmic deathbeds is to outlast them all, and by dying to get the better of death. The fact is that death is life's most terrible but least dispensable instrument. The absurdity without which life is absurd indeed. For without the edges of the canvas, there is no painting. There is no painting, and without life's black mourning border of death, there is only death. Death and time war against all our abstractions and progressively kill every illusion of wholeness. Our dying is the graduated reversal of our belief that it is we who live and the universe that is dead. And either we acknowledge now that our life, which is eternal, lies only in the whole, or that the fact is forced upon us by slow hierarchical stages, so that by dying on an ever vaster scale, we at last are made to discover what really lives. Death is realism about life and the road to it.
Yeah. And that, like
Yeah.
I said, Nate, like when you get into his new angelology, he's basically talking about something that I think this little corner, including Symbolic World especially, has been talking about for a long time, which is trying to understand what principalities and powers are. There's no cosmology, according to Hardy, right? We've killed all the angels, right? And I mean, his solution is just, it's so radical, but it's not something that we don't know, okay? But the way that he talks about it, I find really interesting because he scoops up everything as any good synthesizer should do, okay? Any good hermeticist should do. He scoops up theology, he scoops up poetry, he scoops up science, and he shows how they can have a cosmology, right? They can all have a cosmology. And you know who he's quoting all the time? Clement of Alexandria, Origen, Berdyaev.
Yeah.
Like the list just, that's only like a few, right?
Right. Yeah. I just want to. Anselman has been having a heck of a time with us in the
I can't
in the
see
comment section, and God bless you, Anselman. We love you. Thank
We're not
you
talking
for,
about pantheism.
Thank you for being here. I just want to say that. What do I want to say? I just want to
It
say
doesn't
that we love
matter.
you.
You don't have to say anything.
We love you.
You know, this is the thing. Like the one thing that I'm finding out about myself is that to weary of that, like that statement from Anselman, is to forget your own becoming.
So since Anselman is very focused on words, let me give him some words for a moment for him to ponder. So, what does the epistle of First John tell us God is? Agape, right?
Are you talking to me? I thought you were talking to me. Anselman.
Right?
Yeah.
God is agape. So, in loving God, we love agape itself. And that agape is what joins all things. And this is the very very heart of orthodoxy, whether you see it or not. So that's it. So I'll just leave it at that.
If we objectify the things around us, we will violate them. I'll just say that.
We're not loving them.
We will violate them and violently. And then it will also be, because we've taken the track of objectification, we've learned how to do it to a thing, okay? We do it then to an animal, and then we do it to a person.
Yeah. I liked the part of that passage that I really liked was the fact that he talks about it in the plural. Because it's not just about facing your like your ultimate like death, the end of the end of the of the person that you are now in this life. It's actually something that when you are living in right relation, you're actually doing it over and over again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you have to,
I love
because
how he
and
says that.
the way and specifically it's related to how he talks about to allow for the life of the other. It's like if you are not like you have to be willing to like you really do have to be willing to like to like die in order to let the other truly live. Like even like you can see this in the spirit of a really good conversation.
Yeah.
Like I have to like there's a way in which Sherry, if I am going to really be in this conversation, I need to let myself die over and over again in the conversation so that Sherry can live.
What's that line he has in there about something that really struck me? I remember about I haven't witnessed my death if I haven't survived it or something. Like
Yeah,
it's
right.
so well said.
Yeah. And that's this is like I think like this is like I mean it's a blessing I think that I had that experience that I had where it's like this relates to the high idea of like the whole like death as the guardian of the threshold. I think is the I think this is like I'm not sure that the angel who guards the gates to Eden with the flaming sword. I'm not sure that's not one and the same as the angel of death. I really am not sure that they're not the same, because I
Yeah.
think that death is in fact the that death is the thing that we are afraid of. That is the threshold guardian that we fear will destroy us, and the key is to submit willingly to that destruction, and then on the other side of that, we're we're given life again.
Harding actually says in that part that I listened to yesterday that he's not so sure that God kicked us out of the garden. He thinks we kicked him out and we put the flaming sword
Well,
there.
that lines up with Tom Berg's myth of
Yeah.
Tom Berg's story of the Ouroboros image, right? Yeah, of the serpent swallowing his tail and teaching us that for Tom Berg, we learned the secret of closing the world from the serpent, but it was still our willing action to
Mm-hmm.
do what the serpent showed us to do.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Well, it would be my pleasure and my in Swiss they would say bit my plea to go through those last few chapters with you.
let's do it. No, let's return to we could let's do a new series. Let's just start over from the it's worth returning to because we did it so long ago and I think I would get more out of it now than I
I
did
think so
then.
too. It blew me right out of the water, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And I know that when we went through it, I probably wouldn't have even had a clue what he was talking about. So
Yeah.
it's really good that I waited, and so yeah, it would be fun to do that, Nate, because and he's provocative, but he's also really inventive, really imaginative in the way that he's tackling these things, and he's not outside of orthodoxy. Actually, it's just not the orthodoxy that people are familiar hearing. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't know what is the so what is the best way for us to try to love and try to communicate with people who are still in a place where they're very concerned about rules and
just look in the mirror,
boundaries and
Nate.
propositions
Nate.
and Yeah.
Look in the mirror. Just look in the mirror. We were all
We've all
there.
been there. Yeah, that's
We
true.
were all there. It's called empathy.
I'm trying to think of like the things that made a difference for me.
Well, you know
Sometimes a
what?
little. I think I will say maybe it depends on the person. I think because not the things that
Yeah.
work for one person don't always work for another, right?
No.
So for me, like sometimes gentle derision was effective with me and
Hmm.
helped put me on a better path. So
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
uh,
that's totally same for me. Same
but
for me, really.
not everybody is wired the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here's the thing I'll say about like, let's talk about Anselman in particular. Like Anselman is like, I don't think there's
Faithful.
I think Anselman and I at the end of the day see the same thing. He just
Anselman is
doesn't. He
faithful.
doesn't. He's very faithful, and he's a poet, and he's got a beautiful soul, and I love him. And I would only say that I think that he might be surprised. He might be surprised. Let's say on the other side of this, if we have a conversation on the other side of this veil, where we're better able to understand each other,
We'll all we'll all be surprised.
then I think you'll be surprised like how much we see the same thing, and that
Mm.
um, that maybe he doesn't like the language that I use, but it's the language that I have. And so I'm going to use the language that I have because I don't have any other language to try to express what I'm trying to express. But um, I'm I am definitely making every effort to speak the truth as I see it,
Yeah.
and talk about the beautiful as I see it, and talk about the good as I see it. And I try to want to keep those. I try. My tendency is to try to want to keep those things united in as much as I can. So that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're all in a fairy tale, folks. This is a fairy tale.
Well, so do you have any stories for us today, Shari? Since you were excited about the, you got a story that you have committed to memory that you'd like to share with us today?
Let me think.
Tell me a
Um,
story, Shari. Tell me a story.
I'm not good at remembering like written down stories. I can tell all kinds of stories.
Whatever you got. Tell me a
But I'm
story.
I'm I'm kind of coming up. I'm drawing a blank at the moment.
Okay, I'll tell you what. You know what, Sherry? I'll bail you out. You think about it, and you'll go next. I'll go
Sure.
first. So I know you
Yeah.
like to hear about dreams, right? So I'll tell you a
Yeah.
dream. Dream I
Yeah.
had this week. Earlier this week, I had a dream, and so in my dream, I am at my kitchen island. I'm like I fine mincing something, but I'm kind of like talking to people and like hanging out. It's like I'm clearly preparing a meal for a social gathering, and like getting ready to like making finishing touches on like a first course or whatever. And I'm cooking and talking, and there's lots of people around, and all of a sudden my brother-in-law, not Slicarius, but the other one who plays guitar, my sister Liz's husband, he starts to play I Shall Be Released, the Bob Dylan song.
Yeah.
And as I'm cooking, I start just kind of like singing in a low voice.
Hmm.
I'm singing along, but I'm not singing very loud. And then off to like out of my peripheral vision, where I hadn't noticed before, Jordan Peterson stands up off of the couch and starts singing.
I knew
And
this had
starts
to be.
singing, and he says to me, he says, "You should sing louder. You have a nice voice." And so then all of a sudden, Jordan and I are just like belting out, "I shall be released." uh,
Love that. Love it.
it's a great song. It's such a great song, and it's like
No, I
has.
mean I love
And
the
after
idea.
that dream, I went back to the song, and it's like I saw new depths to that song. In fact, I actually might bring it I might actually bring that for our next poetry. Because
Cool.
Bob Dylan songs are poetry,
Oh my goodness, we
folks.
could do Bob Dylan all day long.
Yeah, we could literally do an entire stream of just Dylan. And it
Forever.
would, yeah, forever, forever. Yeah. So, yeah, so what are your thoughts, Shari?
On your dream?
Yeah.
You want me to tell your dream?
Yeah.
I have thoughts. I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say in public, but I will tell you.
Okay, you'll tell me off. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You'll tell me you'll tell me later on.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. All right. All right.
Yeah.
That's good. All right, so that was
Yeah.
my story. That was my story.
That's a,
Anselman's
that's
asked me to sing it. Oh,
there.
yeah.
There is a story that it's quite lengthy, and I couldn't tell the whole thing in one go, but I can tell. I can give people enough information that I would wish that it would force them to go and look it up and read
Okay.
it for themselves.
Okay.
It's a story within a story by George MacDonald. So it's the story of Cosmo in the book Fantastes. And it's always been a bit of a puzzle for MacDonald scholars because it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the story of Fantastes.
Kind of like Bombadil for Tolkien people. How it's like, why is Bombadil?
Maybe that's where Tolkien got the idea. Actually, Bombadil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of plunked in there, and it's like this whole story, and it takes you right out of fairyland in a way, because it's very like it's a, you know, it would have been contemporary to his time, the setting and all that stuff. But it's about a young man who is very intelligent, and he's in university, and I'm just trying to remember as I go here. I can't remember all the details of his personality, but I just remember he was really smart. I think he used to help some of his friends, roommates or whatever, with their homework, or do their homework for them or something. He was often overlooked, and he was probably socially awkward. And he went into an antique shop because he got himself an apartment and he wanted to furnish it. And so he went into this like thrift store type thing. And he saw this really beautiful mirror hanging up high, and he was taken by it. And the man who owned the store had a Gandalfy feel to him, okay? And he said, would you like to, he just came up and saw him staring at the mirror, and he said, I think you'd like to have this mirror, wouldn't you? And he's like, yeah, I love this mirror. He goes, well, then it should be yours, you know? And so you get this feeling like this shop owner knows more than Cosmo does, right? And so he takes the mirror home and he hangs it up in his living room. And of course, the mirror is reflecting his living room in it, right? His sofa, his chairs, his fireplace, it's all in the mirror. And one day he's sitting on his sofa and he's reading a book, and something catches his eye, and he looks up, and there's a woman in the mirror on the furniture that's in his room. Okay. And she comes in and she's crying and she's troubled and weeping and, you know, laying on the couch. And he goes up and he's trying to talk to her, but then he realizes she can't see him at all. And so it takes him a while to figure out how to do this, but he finally decides he wants to make her more comfortable. He starts falling in love with her, okay? And he wants to make her more comfortable. And then he realizes that everything in her room is in his room. Mm-hmm. So then he switches out his furniture, right? So she has a more comfortable couch to sit on. And I mean, I'm going to cry if I talk about this too much. And so she comes in the room when he switches out the furniture. And she's like taken aback because it's a new room, right? And she lays on the sofa and she loves it because it's so soft, and she starts to feel happy. And then he replaces something else and she gets happier. And then he replaces something and she gets happier. And then all of a sudden she realizes that somebody is watching her. Okay? That somebody knows that she was unhappy and somebody is trying to make her happy, which means somebody loves her. And the story goes in a crazy direction after that, and I'm not going to say any more, but
go and read it. It's in Fantasties.
Go and read the story of Cosmo in Fantasties.
Yeah. So I just want to say something. I'm like, T Grog is like such a regular. I just don't understand. Like, the things he's saying right now are so just juvenile. I'll be blunt about it. And T Grog, I'm pretty sure, is older than I am. So juvenile and so just mean spirited and worthless that I cannot fathom what's going on. The only thing I can think is that you must be really hurting, my friend. And whatever is hurting you, I pray that your suffering is alleviated. And I'm sorry for you.
T-Grog kind of reminds me of the Queen in Alice in Wonderland, you know. She's just running around going, off with their heads! She's got one thing in mind. She just wants everything to go away that she doesn't like.
He says he likes to help people think clearly, but that's not what you're doing, though, T-Grog. You're actually
I feel like I'm thinking.
You're just hurling insults. There's no clarity. There's actually no clarity or consistency in your thought that I've seen at all. Just a stubborn axiomatic acceptance of dogmatic materialism, and a very, very narrow view of the world. And there are more things in heaven and earth. That's all I have to say to you. And if you're welcome to be here, and you're welcome to make comments, and you're welcome to come on stream, but I'm very curious as to why you keep coming back.
I can't see any of these comments. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. So
maybe I shouldn't even bother.
Why cite? I mean, it's like, what? Do you not read like? I don't understand. It's like you don't.
It's called.
You don't believe in reading. Like he says. He talks about English teachers. Is like, so my friend. If you have no love of literature, you are not living life.
I'm just gonna say, T-Grog, that George MacDonald had a master's degree in physics and chemistry.
That I did not know.
Yeah, he did. He did that before he did his theological studies. 3 years, he graduated 3 years before with a master's in chemistry and physics. He wanted to be a medical doctor, but his family didn't have the money, or that's what his son figures. And then he went to theological seminary.
Jordan has a
lasted a year in the pulpit, and they kicked him out. Okay, because he wasn't dogmatic, T-Grog, and he didn't say anything that wasn't slant. So welcome to the world of slant, T-Grog. That's where you are right now.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to just quickly address that. Yeah, I think he has. So yes, KL, thank you. And this is why I'm trying to I'm trying to say this as like kindly as I can. And I have a son who's on the autism spectrum. And interestingly enough, here's the weird thing about my autistic son. You know who's he doesn't really go in for poetry or literature much either, but he does have literature that he loves. And you know what poet he loves? Of all the poets that you could possibly think of, William Blake. He loves William Blake. How about that?
I wouldn't be surprised
So,
if William Blake was autistic.
so maybe, hey, T-Grog, maybe read some William Blake and then we can talk. Because Blake is definitely my jam.
Well, you
and
see, because I think everyone is a
and hey, I spend my entire life like, don't think that I won't have, like, if you come on stream, don't think that I won't have patience for you and treat you with kindness and grace. It seems to be my lot in life to be surrounded by a lot of people on the autism spectrum. So they all think I'm crazy. Um, like Slack there, that's my brother-in-law. He's also on the spectrum and thinks I'm crazy half the time. But he loves me and I love him. It's all good.
And he's not as Slack is sometimes more metaphysical than you are.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, more metaphysical. Yeah, because I tend to like. There was a time in my life where I was big into metaphysics, but I tend to direct away from metaphysics these days. I'm more toward just yeah, vision
Mm-hmm.
rather than metaphysics. So.
Well,
What time do you have to? Oh, first of all, before you go, you have to tell me what are you going to say to Peugeot?
I don't know if I'm going to say anything to Peugeot.
You don't know if you're going to get a chance to talk to him.
I don't know if there's how many people are going to be there. There's a couple of families here. The lady that I booked with, she said there's some families here, and they said something about a conference too. Maybe they're going over there. Okay. I said probably. She goes, they have kids. I said that sounds very orthodox.
Right. You know, that's interesting thing. That's an interesting thing I want to tell you about the Symbolic World Summit that was different. There were actually kids. There were kids, yeah.
Very orthodox, Nate.
There were kids, and there were a lot of women there. It was even like there were times when like there were kids that were like babies that were crying in the middle of presentations, and it was like almost like kind of like being in church. Like, right?
Well, in the Orthodox Church, there is no Sunday school or nursery. The kids are there all through the liturgy, all sizes.
Catholic Church is the same thing.
So, yeah. But anyway, so we'll see. There's a lunch, and I don't know how many people are there. They sold out. They sold all their tickets. But it's, and they have a hall. It's right across the street here. So they're going to be in the hall. So I don't know how many people, but we'll see. But I did make him something. You want to see what I made him? I made him this. It's a scarf out of my sheep. Can you see that?
Oh, that's lovely.
And I'm gonna write a little card that goes with it, because Tolkien there's a quote from Tolkien about how he used the Gotland sheep in his Lord of the Rings novels for the elven cloaks, because
one second here. So, T-Grog, when you actually act as if someone is not worth paying attention to or listening to because they're a quote English teacher, that is an ad hominem attack. That is not an attack on any idea at all. And also it's baseless. It's like as if like people who are skilled with language and literature have no insight to give. It's a reductive ad hominem, and it is not attacking any idea, and it's not engaging in any kind of real argument either. By the way, I mean, I know I talk about a lot. I know I talk about poetry and literature and all that kind of thing a lot, but if anyone really ever wants to come on here and is in a mood to really throw down and wants to get in an argument with me, I'll show you the skills that I try to keep under wraps. Because I don't like it. But if I need to do it for your own good, I'll do it. Okay. Carry on.
Well, the thing is, yeah, anyway, it's okay. There are no ideas without people, T-Love. Ideas come from people. and they come from places of experience. And so when you negate a person's ideas, you negate them as a person, and you also negate or invalidate their experience in life. And there's nothing more diminishing than that. Nothing more diminishing than that. So, and I mean, I wouldn't
Which
even.
isn't to say that
I personally, I don't engage with people like
yeah.
Tigran. I just don't, because that's all they want to do. They either want to insult you or defend their insults to you.
I will
So,
engage with the ones who continue to show up because they're there for a reason. And I think that I think that
well, I'll talk
they
about I'll talk to Tigrog about anything,
right.
but not the stuff
They're
that he
just
wants to do.
yeah, that kind of
I'm not
like I
going to
don't
play his game. Is what I'm
right.
saying. I'm not
I
playing
gotcha.
his game. So, but anyway, I have to go now.
So if you do get a chance to talk to Jonathan, give him my love and
Yeah,
poke him to respond to my email.
he will. He'll
I know
do
he
it.
will. I know he will. I know he will.
Yeah,
Um, I think
especially
we
because he, he apparently had a very good experience there, and I'm really glad that that happened.
Oh, I had such a good experience there. I really loved it, and yeah. Oh, I can't tell you about what Martin did. I gotta tell you
What did
So,
he do?
Father Joe and I are in the VIP room at the end. Like at the end, we're waiting in line for our photo opportunity with Jonathan. Right. Martin Shaw comes in to the room. He starts heading directly for me. He talks to me the entire time that I'm in line waiting to get up to talk to Jonathan. And we talk about we actually this I do want to get back to this at some point because we actually talked about is he brought up Malcolm Guite and then we talked together about what Malcolm Guite has said both on the Perennial Digression podcast and on the Common Toad about how they're like one of the reasons that Christianity is very shallow in North America and doesn't have as deep a roots is that it never really integrated the stories of the land that the way that happened in Europe where like the pagan world became integrated into the Christian world so that it
Mm-hmm.
became so that it wove together into like this single fabric. That
Right.
never happened. That never happened here because essentially because America exists only as a nation of modernity, and modernity is just hostile to that kind of synthesis altogether. Like it's just because of the nature of the way it is single-mindedly aimed at truth, but divorced in a way that can often be divorced from goodness and beauty. And
Yeah.
it just like has and this singularity of purpose that makes it hard for you to engage with that kind of synthesis. So, and the larger context was like we were talking about how as Anglicans, my priest and I could like try to live into this kind of like epic Christianity that he was talking about that he believes he sees in Orthodoxy versus the lyric, which he sees more in the West. And he brought up Malcolm as an example of someone who he sees living into that kind of epic Christianity in within the Anglican tradition. And so, yeah, so that was like what we were talking about the whole time was this like
Yeah.
this need to like come to terms with the stories of the land and the stories of the people who were here before us.
Well, that's interesting because there's David Bentley Hart wrote a piece on what's it called now? It's a book by a guy from I think the 1700s, 1600s, Robert Kirk, called The Commonwealth of the
Mm-hmm.
Fairies or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of a mystery around this guy because he used to go up on this hill that he called Fairy Hill near his house, and he would commune with fairies, and he wrote down all about their lives and everything about them, right? And then one day he disappeared and never came back, and so everybody says that the fairies took him away. But anyway, there was David Bentley Hart quotes from some historic document where these Englishmen are, in Newfoundland in Canada. And this is like a long, long time ago, like I don't know when the trip was, 1800s or whatever. And they said there's no fairies in this country, right? And then I think David Bentley Hart makes the argument that in order for you to see them, you have to be from there. You have to be from the place in order for you to see the fairies. So the Englishmen couldn't see the fairies in Newfoundland, but the First Nations people could. Okay.
Right.
So, so this is why I would propose. This is why place and the land is so important, because when you understand it, it becomes you start to see the fairies. Okay, it becomes enchanted. Is essentially what I suppose Malcolm and Martin are talking about. Something
well,
like
Martin, we were talking about. I was talking to him about like what Martin's view was, and or what Malcolm's view was, and he recommended to me you've seen that First Nations Bible.
Yeah.
That they translated.
Yeah.
Which I'd already seen. I like this, and I do like the excerpts that I've seen.
Lance has, I think. Lance has had it for a long time. He got it right away.
So that really got me excited. So like one of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find for our conference that we're putting together in September. I want to try to find a local
First Nation speaker.
Local First Nations or
cool.
Local Native American speaker from one of the local tribes. Mm-hmm. And so I'm starting to try to locate someone and to bring that.
Does Martin know anyone? Because he knows quite a few people on the West Coast.
He might. I'll shoot him an email and see if he does.
Yeah.
And maybe continue that. Anyway, I'm holding you from going. So you get out of here. Go see Jonathan. Yeah, I think this is I've got a birthday party coming up for my sister that I'm going to be hosting, so we'll just make this a shorter stream today. And we had the bonus stream earlier with
it's not that short. I think we've been on here for like an hour or something.
Yeah, so not too bad.
Oh, good.
So thank you everyone for joining us, including T-Grog. You keep showing up, brother. So you're here for a reason.
I think if T-Grog, if you just practice not saying anything, like just zip it, then maybe your ears would pick up.
Tayo asked about our conference. So Tayo asked about our conference. So, so we're having a conference here where I live in Olympia, Washington. It's going to be in September, September 13th and 14th. There's an optional extra that you can purchase for a barbecue event that I'll be hosting at my home on Thursday evening, the evening before the conference starts. So that's in Olympia, Washington. The venue is going to be the Olympia Christian Reformed Church. Tickets are going to be $200 for a standard ticket and $300 if you want to come to the barbecue. However, if you are an estuary leader, you can get a discounted ticket. I haven't put them up yet, but I will. So anyone who's an estuary leader who's interested in a discounted ticket, shoot me an email at grillcountry@gmail.com and I will send you the secret link to the discounted price. Have a good Saturday, everyone. I'm going to go get ready to throw a birthday party for my sister. Take care.